The forest was eerily silent, no birdsong, no rustling leaves, just the distant whisper of the wind threading through towering pines, and then a cry. Faint, desperate, and full of sorrow. Deep in the remote wilderness of Alaska, where the world remains untamed, a lone man trudged through the dense undergrowth. His boots crunched against the frost-bitten earth, each step guided by instinct and experience. Ethan Carter was no stranger to the wild. A seasoned wildlife researcher, he had spent years studying the fragile balance of predator and prey. But what he stumbled upon that morning would haunt him forever. At the base of a gnarled cedar tree lay a small, trembling figure, a bear cub no older than a few weeks, its fur matted with dirt and leaves. It barely had the strength to lift its head. Its mother was nowhere in sight. Ethan's breath hitched. This was wrong. Cubs never ventured alone, not at this age. And then he saw it. The blood. A trail of deep red smearing the snow-dusted ground, leading into the darkness beyond. Somewhere out there, a life had been taken. A mother bear, most likely fallen to poachers or a territorial predator, and now left behind was a helpless orphan. Ethan knew the odds. Without its mother, this cub had no chance. It would either starve, freeze, or fall prey to the ruthless law of the wild. Nature could be both beautiful and cruel. He crouched beside the cub, his heart warring between logic and emotion. Intervening meant disrupting the wild's natural course, but walking away? That was a death sentence. The cub let out another weak cry, barely a whisper now, and in that moment, Ethan made his choice. He scooped the trembling bundle into his arms, holding a fragile life against his chest. What he didn't know was that this one decision, this single act of mercy, would alter his fate forever. Because years later, when he least expected it, the bear would come looking for him. The Alaskan wilderness is a land of extremes, where survival is not a right, but a battle fought every day. Towering evergreens stretch toward an endless sky, their frost-laced branches whispering secrets carried by the wind. Beneath them, a world both beautiful and brutal unfolds. For a bear cub, life begins with the warmth of a mother's fur and the rhythmic sound of her steady breathing. Her presence means protection, nourishment, and survival. But without her, the world turns into an unforgiving expanse of dangers. Ethan Carter knew this all too well. He had studied Alaskan grizzlies for years, watched them hunt, play, and rear their young. A mother bear could teach her cubs how to fish in the raging rivers, how to dig for roots beneath the frost-hardened soil, how to recognize the scent of danger carried in the wind. But this cub, this orphaned soul, had been robbed of that future. Inside his remote cabin, tucked away near the base of a glacier-fed stream, Ethan gently placed the cub by the fire. It barely moved. Its tiny ribs rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, exhaustion pressing down like an unseen weight. Would it even survive the night? Ethan worked quickly, warming a small bottle of goat's milk over the fire. It wasn't ideal. Nothing could replace a mother bear's milk, but it was the best chance the cub had. He held the bottle to the cub's lips, waiting. For a moment, nothing, and then a slow, hesitant sip. Relief flooded Ethan's chest. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Over the following days, he watched as the cub fought to survive. It was weak, frail, but resilient. With each passing day, its strength returned. First, its tiny paws found the courage to explore the cabin. Then its instincts kicked in, playfully swiping at Ethan's bootlaces, nosing around the wooden floor for food. And just like that, something unexpected happened. A bond formed. Ethan had saved animals before, tagged bears, monitored wolves, even rescued an injured eagle once. But this was different. This cub wasn't just surviving. It was trusting him. Each night, as the Alaskan cold howled outside, the cub would curl up beside the fire, its small body rising and falling in peaceful sleep. It no longer cried for a mother that would never return. But Ethan knew the truth. This cub didn't belong in a cabin. It belonged out there, in the wild, where it could roam free beneath the endless northern sky. And one day, no matter how much it hurt, he would have to let it go. What he didn't realize, though, was that letting go didn't mean goodbye. Because years later, in a way no one could have predicted, the cub would find its way back. The cub grew quickly. What was once a frail, trembling creature had transformed into a strong and curious young bear. Its paws, once clumsy on wooden floors, now carried weight with confidence. Its fur thickened, its eyes gleamed with newfound awareness, and its instincts, buried beneath the safety of Ethan's care, began to awaken. Ethan saw it in the way the cub would stand by the window, gazing at the endless wilderness beyond. He saw it in the way it playfully swatted at logs, mimicking the movements of an adult bear practicing its hunting skills. It was time. But how do you say goodbye to something that has become family? Ethan wrestled with the decision, knowing that keeping the bear here, captive in a world not meant for it, would be a selfish choice. And so, with a heavy heart, he made the call. The nearest wildlife rehabilitation center agreed to help with the release. They would take the bear deep into the protected wilderness, far enough from human settlements to ensure it would not associate people with safety or food. A clean break. A new beginning. The day arrived. Ethan loaded his bear, into the transport crate, whispering soft reassurances even though the cub wouldn't understand. It let out a low, uncertain whimper, pressing its nose against the metal bars. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. As the truck rumbled away, carrying the bear toward its new life, Ethan stood frozen, watching it disappear into the wilderness. The cabin had never felt so quiet. Years later, a haunting presence. Seasons passed. The bitter Alaskan winters gave way to fleeting summers, and Ethan continued his work, tracking grizzlies, studying their movements, ensuring the fragile balance of predator and prey remained intact. But even as time moved forward, he never stopped thinking about the bear. Had it survived? Had it found its place in the wild, as nature intended? One evening, as Ethan sat by the fire, a deep, resonant sound echoed from the forest beyond his cabin. A low, guttural huff, one he hadn't heard in years. His breath caught. Stepping onto the porch, he scanned the tree line. Nothing but shadows and moonlight. And then, movement. A massive shape emerged from the darkness, slow and deliberate. A bear. Not just any bear. The bear. Ethan's heart pounded as the grizzly stood there, watching him. It was fully grown now, towering, powerful. But its eyes, those eyes had not changed. He took a step forward. The bear didn't move. It simply stood there, as if remembering. And then, in a moment Ethan would never be able to explain, the bear let out a soft chuff, the same sound it had made as a cub when it curled beside the fire. Recognition. For what felt like eternity, man and beast stood face to face, a bond neither time nor distance could erase. And just as quietly as it had come, the bear turned, disappearing into the wilderness once more. But Ethan knew it had never truly been goodbye. Ethan stood motionless on the porch, his breath still caught in his chest. Had it really happened? Had the bear, his bear, returned to him after all these years? Or was it just a trick of his mind, a longing for something he had let go of long ago? But the paw prints in the snow told the truth. Massive, deep, unmistakable. The realization sent a shiver through him, not of fear, but of awe. The grizzly had not only survived, but thrived. Against all odds, it had made it through the harsh winters, the brutal landscapes, and the unseen dangers of the wild. And yet, somehow, it had found its way back. Over the next few weeks, Ethan became aware of something unusual. He was being watched. Whenever he ventured deep into the forest to check on the grizzly population, he felt a presence, a silent guardian in the distance. At first, he dismissed it as paranoia, but then he saw it. A shadow among the trees. The golden brown coat blending into the earth. The faint rustle of movement just beyond reach. The bear wasn't just passing through, it was following him. Not in a predatory way, but with something else. Something eerily close to companionship. It never came too close, never intruded on his space, but it was there. Watching, waiting, protecting. One evening, a blizzard rolled in faster than Ethan had anticipated. The temperature plummeted, the wind howled through the trees, and the snow thickened into an impenetrable wall. His cabin was still miles away, and his survival gear, though sufficient, was no match for the relentless storm. Then, through the whiteout, a shape emerged. The bear. Ethan's limbs were growing stiff from the cold, but the sight of the massive creature sent a flicker of warmth through his chest. It chuffed, low and deep, then turned, walking ahead. It was leading him. Staggering forward, Ethan followed. Step by step, the bear guided him through the storm, weaving through familiar paths he could no longer see. It never looked back, but it never strayed too far ahead either. Hours passed before Ethan finally spotted the cabin, barely visible through the blizzard. He stumbled onto the porch, gasping from exhaustion. As he turned to look back, the bear was gone, vanished into the storm. But Ethan knew. It had saved him, just as he had once saved it. A connection that defies time. The blizzard had passed, leaving the world blanketed in an eerie silence. Ethan sat by the window, staring into the endless white expanse, his mind racing. The bear had found him and saved him. But why? How? Could it have truly remembered? The question gnawed at him, but deep down, he already knew the answer. Days turned into weeks, and though Ethan searched, he never saw the bear again. Not up close, but he sensed it, just as he had before. On quiet nights, when the wind barely whispered through the trees, he could feel something watching from the shadows. The bond they had formed wasn't one of ownership, obligation, or dependency. It was something deeper. A mutual recognition, an unspoken trust, two lives forever intertwined by fate. Science meets something more. Ethan, a seasoned wildlife biologist, had always relied on science to explain the animal world. Bears are solitary. They do not form attachments to humans. They do not track people down. And yet, this one had. Science told him it was impossible, but life in the wild had shown him otherwise. The truth was, animals were far more intelligent, perceptive, and emotionally complex than humans often gave them credit for. They remembered acts of kindness. They formed connections beyond survival. And maybe, just maybe, they understood gratitude. This bear hadn't just survived, it had chosen to remember. A story that stirs the soul. Ethan knew he would never see the bear up close again. It belonged to the wilderness now, and he respected that. But sometimes as he walked through the snowy woods, he would find fresh tracks near his cabin. Large, unmistakable, as if left there just to remind him. Not all bonds fade with time. Some endure. Some remain, unseen but never forgotten. And in the heart of the wild, a man and a bear had proven that even the most impossible connections can stand the test of time. In the vast wilderness, where survival is dictated by instinct and the harsh laws of nature, one story stood apart. A story of kindness, memory, and an unbreakable bond. Ethan had always believed that the wild was indifferent, that nature did not remember. But standing there, staring at the massive paw prints in the snow, he knew he had been wrong. Some connections, no matter how improbable, are never truly lost. A message that echoes beyond the wild. This was more than just an extraordinary tale of man and beast. It was a reminder of something far greater. The way we treat animals, the way we interact with nature, it all matters. What we give, we may one day receive. What we destroy, we may never get back. This bear, an orphan left for dead, had found kindness in a world that had taken everything from it. And years later, when the roles were reversed, it had returned that kindness in the only way it knew how. A final thought to carry forward. As Ethan watched the horizon, he smiled, not because he expected to see the bear again, but because he didn't have to. He had learned what he needed to know. The wild does remember, and sometimes, just sometimes, it repays a debt. This story is a powerful testament to the intelligence and emotional depth of animals. It reminds us why conservation matters, why protecting wildlife is not just about numbers, but about the lives, relationships, and incredible stories that unfold in nature every day. If you believe in the power of nature, in the importance of coexistence, share this story. Let the world remember, just as the wild does.